And thank you guys for joining us. We're excited to have you participate in day 8 of our 22 days of service to the greater Baton Rouge area. Okay, so it's 3 o'clock. Thank you for joining us. My name is Tamiko Garrison, and today I'm going to be talking to you about the importance of a medical history. Excuse me if I'm going back and forth. I'm actually working with 2 screens today. So my laptop is very small, so I had to hook up a larger monitor. But again, welcome to day 8 of our 22 days of service. So the objectives for today is to actually define what a medical history is. Make sure that you understand the importance of it for you and your family. To identify key information that's necessary for a great medical history that could hopefully, when it's done correctly, help your provider, your doctors, help your family, and help yourself. And at the end, we're actually going to, I want everybody to have pen and paper or their computers ready. We're actually going to compile a living and breathing medical history. So this is what items that you need for the workshop: pen and paper, if you want to actually write your medical history. If you want to put it on your computer, you can put it in your cell phone. I say have at least 3 family contacts, so you want to have their information ready. A list of any allergies that you may have, whether it's food, medication, animals, bees, your diagnoses, and when you were diagnosed. A list of medications and the dosage, both over-the-counter medication and prescribed medication. You want to have a list of your surgeries, the date, the doctor who performed the surgery, and also the location. You want to have a list potentially of your immunizations, the date, and maybe the location where it occurred. Your blood type is very key to your health. So knowing your blood type, and if you have it, we're going to put it on this document. And then your family history of illnesses, what they were diagnosed, when they were diagnosed, and God forbid if they're deceased, knowing their cause of death. Okay, so who am I? I am a 1990 graduate of Southern University with a bachelor's degree in accounting. I have about 30 years of experience in law enforcement, compliance, investigations, and auditing. Currently, I am the Medicare Advantage Compliance Manager for Blue Cross Blue Shield of Louisiana. I've been a Special Investigation Unit Manager. I've done a whole lot in the compliance arena. I'm currently the Justice of the Peace in Donaldsonville, Louisiana. I serve the west side of Ascension Parish. There are 3 of us, so I'm one of 3 serving the parish. I also consider myself the empowered patient. Right after some of my medical issues, I started doing workshops and hosting health fairs and bringing different subject matter experts in to share information about when you get sick. It is an entire lifestyle that changes. So I consider myself the empowered patient. I'm also a member of Baton Rouge Delta Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. And I'm a mother of Tamiko Stroud, who is also a member of Baton Rouge Delta, and I'm the wife of Ira Garrison. But who am I really? One of my friends deemed me an invisible illness warrior. What that is you can't see my illness. You don't see everything that's going on within my body. You know, a lot of times when I would park, when I was really going through all of the issues, I would park in handicap, and people would look at me and, you know, why is she parking there? You really don't know what's going on in someone's life. So there are tons of invisible illness warriors out there. I see someone raise their hand. Go ahead. Sorry, come off of mute. Erica Coleman, did you raise your hand? Okay, it must have gone away. But I'm an invisible illness warrior with polycystic kidney disease. So this is who I am. I was diagnosed in 1985. When I was tested, when I offered to give my father, donate a kidney to my father, because he also had polycystic kidney disease. So in that attempt to give him one of my kidneys, they diagnosed me with polycystic kidney disease. So who am I? It's genetic. Polycystic kidney disease is a genetic disease where cysts grow on your kidneys, and eventually you go into end-stage renal failure because you're diagnosed with end-stage renal disease. And in 2013, I was diagnosed with end-stage renal disease. I was also placed on peritoneal dialysis in August of 2013 through January of 2014 because of the end-stage renal failure. And then I received a kidney transplant in 2014. My brother donated his kidney. The funny part about that is my brother was diagnosed with polycystic kidney disease in 1995 and was not able to give my father a kidney as well. And then we found out it was an incorrect diagnosis in 2014. So he was able to donate a kidney to me. I'm on immunosuppressants for life. I take about 4 milligrams of Prograf in the morning, 5 milligrams in the evening. I'm on my Fortic, which is about, it's another immunosuppressant. I take 2 pills in the morning, 2 pills in the afternoon, in the evening. I was also diagnosed with high blood pressure. I was diagnosed in 2008. It is genetic, but it's also a symptom or an issue related to polycystic kidney disease. I'm on amlodipine, 10 milligrams daily. I'm on a multivitamin, all to assist with assisting my body in staying healthy. In 2017, I was diagnosed with medication-induced diabetes resulting from a perceived transplant. The doctors thought I was going into kidney failure and ended up giving me steroids in the hospital for about 4 days. In addition to the immunosuppressants. And when I went in, I was diagnosed with one thing. When I came out, I added a diagnosis and I added medication-induced diabetes. As a result of that, I'm on Toujeo, 12 units once a day, and Ozempic, 0.5 units once a week. I was also, who am I really, diagnosed with a blood clot disorder. In 2020, while I was going through perimenopause symptoms, I was prescribed some medication. And that medication, one of the side effects was a blood clot. And I ended up with pulmonary embolism, which is a blood clot in the lung. And then after the diagnosis, I found out that it was genetic, that I have what my father has, which is a blood clot disorder. So now they place me on Eliquis, 5 milligrams a day. So at the end of the day, I take about 17 pills a day. So this is who I really am. And I call myself a walking CPT HCPCS code book. For those of you that are in the medical field, those are the codes that the doctors use to bill insurance companies. So there's a code for everything. So whenever I was teaching my investigators about how to investigate Medicaid fraud and Medicare Advantage fraud, I would always use myself as an example because I'm a walking HCPCS CPT code book. Okay. So let's talk about what is a medical history. So according to the National Cancer Institute, a medical history is a record of information about a person's health. It may include your allergies, your illnesses, surgeries, immunizations, results of physical exams and tests, medicines taken. Also, it's health habits. It could be your diet and your exercise. It also includes health information about your close family members, your parents, your grandparents, your children, brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, and even cousins. It's their current and past illnesses, patterns of certain diseases in families, and also causes of death. And FYI, a medical history is also called a health history. So why is a health history important? First of all, it's important for your doctors. Whenever you go to the doctor, the first visit, if you haven't been in a year, the first thing you have to do is sit down and fill out a form. So you're filling out that form so that at a glance, the doctor will be able to understand your state of health. And they'll be able to determine your history as it possibly relates to the complaint that you're going in for today. If my chest is hurting, if my kidneys, if I have pains, if I have bladder issues, urinary tract issues, when you're filling out that medical history form, the doctor And there's nurses, they're looking, or her nurses, they're looking at that document to see if they could diagnose you. So it's very important, the medical histories for the doctor. It can also help them to gain more information about potential harm that a treatment may do. Avoiding medication to which the patient might have an allergy. Avoiding administering or prescribing a patient that has previously taken medication that has a severe adverse reaction. For instance, for me, I have a severe reaction to morphine. So with all of my diagnoses and everything that's going on, I'm always in a lot of pain. But the doctors and I have to have this conversation every time. Do you want morphine? Because we know that you're going to go into labored breathing. Your oxygen level is going to decrease. So they have to determine, is it worth giving it to me? But they know at that point that there's going to be an adverse reaction. I've also taken some medication for nausea and vomiting that caused lockjaw. So I try not to take that one at all costs. I do not want to have lockjaw. So communicating with your doctors and having them understand all of this is very important for your personal care, because I want all of you to become empowered patients. And also, often some of the information in your health history, your medical history, can aid them in directing treatment, or may indicate the need for further treatment or further workup to determine what's going on at the time that you're at the doctor. Now, the history that you provide to them is good. And, a lot of times we go in and we just sit down and we just check the box. We don't have anything on the side of us to say, okay, this is what I've been diagnosed over the years. And that's what we're building up to, so that when you get this document that we're going to do together, you'll be able to take it everywhere you go. Your family will be able to have it, and you'll have it right there. So you'll have exact information, true information that's going to help you fill out these forms. And a family history may help direct or improve your care by connecting your condition with genetic links. Very important. Okay, why is it important? It's important for your family. Okay, does your husband, your wife, your children, your mother, your father, your grandmother, grandfather, aunts, uncles, cousins, anybody that's close to you, your significant other, do they know your history? Do they know the medications and dosage that you're on? God forbid something happens and you pass out, and your significant other, your parents are right there. Do they know what medication you're currently taking? We put medication in the medicine cabinet. We have medications on the side by our bed. We have some in the kitchen and cabinets. Do they know what medication you're on in the dosage? Question. Do they know your doctors, and not just your primary care? Do they know your cardiologist? Do they know your OBGYN? Do they know the doctors and where they're located? Because this history, if something happens to you, is going to speak for you. So do they know the surgeries you've had? Now, I've been married. My husband may know the surgeries that I've had while I was married to him, but does he know the surgeries that I had prior to him? Does your family know the surgeries you had? Sometimes we're very secretive with our information, but when you learn to share it, you learn so much more. It's not always good to be secretive. If you get a diagnosis, you'll be amazed how if you share it with family members, they'll be like, oh yeah, cousin so-and-so had that. Aunt so-and-so had that. Uncle so-and-so had that. And it enlightens you, and it enlightens your doctor. Allergies. Does your family know you're allergic to certain things? Do they know if you're allergic to chocolate? Do they know if you're allergic to grass or smoke or anything? Look at what happened at the Buffaloes game with Damar Hamlin. The first thing I did was I prayed for him when I was watching. I wasn't even watching the game. I was on the internet, and I happened to see it come across the internet, and I went straight to the game. And the first thing I did was pray for him. The second thing, when I was reading it, I thought about his mother. I was like, I wonder if his mother can answer all of these questions that we're talking about today. Does she know what medications he's on? Does she, because while they were doing CPR, before they transported him to the hospital, they waited for his mother to come out the stands. And all I could think of was, they're going to bombard her with all kind of questions that she may or may not know the answer to. But how important is it to have this medical history readily available for your family members so that you can answer the questions that they're going to ask? Have you had any surgeries? Are you currently taking any medication? Do you drink? Do you smoke? All of those questions can be answered on your medical history if you choose to. Okay, how is it important for you? A medical history, a health history, allows you to keep all of your health history in one place, not in 5 different folders, not in 5 different locations. When you leave the doctor, they give you that little medical form that tells you what your diagnosis is and the prescriptions. Is it all over the place in your house? No, it is in one location. Whether it's handwritten or typed, you're going to have it in one location. The key to this health history or this medical history is that it is a living and breathing document. Stuff goes on it, stuff could come off of it. If you're no longer taking something over the counter, if you no longer prescribe something, you can either delete it or you can just put, no longer taken with the date. So this is constant updates so that your family understands what's going on in your life. So it's living and breathing for you. It changes when your life changes. When I was on that medication that they prescribed to help me with my perimenopause, that quickly came off. I was like, oh, causes blood clots. It's on there, but it'll say causes blood clots. So if something happens to me, they'll know what triggered it. Do you know your family's history? Your husband, your wife, your mother, your father? Will you remember it in the emergency room? That's the key. You may remember it if we're sitting in the doctor's office and, your family is sitting with you and you're checking boxes and you say, okay, did I take this? Did I take that? But in an emergency, and when you cannot speak for yourself, will you remember? Okay, someone has a question. Did you want to come off mute? I'm sorry, I can't read the question, so.
Okay, Ms. Garrison. The question is, so since the majority of people take diabetes medication, why is it a big deal to report these if they've never had a major reaction and they all have access to their charts?
Well, sometimes you go to a doctor that may not have an access to your chart. And then your dosage changes because, for instance, for Prograf for me, sometimes depending on my numbers, they'll change my nephrologist will change my dosage from 4 to 3 or to 2. But when I get to my primary care, it doesn't say that it's changed. Sometimes even with Ozempic, I changed from 0.25 to 0.5 to 1. I know it, the endocrinologist knows it, but does my nephrologist know it? Because some of the electronic medical records do not talk to each other. So it's best to keep it yourself. You're trusting, and I'll tell you this, you're trusting that the person that's sitting at that computer is inputting it correctly. Trusting. So I'm gonna trust myself. So I'm gonna have this document and I'm gonna have it readily available. So I hope that answers your question, because all of these electronic medical records do not talk to each other, and you're trusting the person that's inputting it. One keystroke off and my medication changes. My dosage change a lot. Okay, I think there's another question.
There's one more. At what age should you start getting tested for different diseases?
Okay, now that's a tough question because I am not a medical professional. I am just an empowered patient. Back in the day, we were very careful about getting diagnosed because there was always these there's those conditions when you get into the insurance. But if your family has an issue and you're having those diagnoses, I would get checked. There was, and I'll give you an example. I have a hereditary disease. I don't even know if I say this in here, but I have at least 7 members of my family that have polycystic kidney disease. My father had it, his mother has it. If my daughter does not get it, the disease stops. It will no longer keep going in my lineage. But if she gets it, then it has a possibility to go to her children. Do I want to get her tested now? No, I don't. If she starts having issues, will I get her tested? Yes. So in my situation, that's how it is. My mother passed away from breast cancer. So I started getting mammograms at an earlier age from everybody else because my grandmother had breast cancer, my maternal aunt had breast cancer, another maternal aunt has breast cancer, and my mom passed away from breast cancer. So my screening started early. So I would talk to your primary care physician. And when I tell you, you're supposed to have a coordinated system of care in your life, I make sure that all of my doctors talk. And when I do this, I mean talk, because I have too many issues for you not to talk. And you have to stay very vigilant in your care. So, going there, when I go in with a list of questions. And I know that my doctor sits down and he gets comfortable because he knows that I have a ton of questions I'm about to ask. So, you're going to have to talk to your primary care, talk to your family, and then you're going to have to make that decision. If it's for me, with my daughter, there's no need at this point. But with the cancer diagnosis, there was a need. So you're going to really talk to your primary care. And I would recommend that everybody has that doctor, that when you walk up in there, they know your name, they know who you are. If you do not have that relationship with your provider, and this is coming from the empowered patient, not a medical professional, I will fire you and find me another one, because this is my life and I have to have a great relationship with the person that is in charge of my life. So I hope that answers your question. Any more questions?
Yes, do you have time for one more?
Oh, I do.
We have a comment that says the reason why medication dose has been changed or discontinued is important as well. Would you care to speak to that?
Say that one more time. The reason why
a medication dose has been changed or discontinued is important as well.
It is because like I said, with my kidney immunosuppressants, the dosage changed because they're monitoring my numbers. With the Ozempic, with the diabetes, the dosage changed to help my A1C. So, you keeping up with that dosage and making sure that medical record, the electronic medical record at the doctor's office, and and yours is very important. You want as accurate of information as you could possibly get. And I'll add this, because I usually do this in another workshop, but don't lie to your doctor. If you didn't take the medication, don't say you took it. Don't lie. There's no need. We may feel guilty because we know we're supposed to take it, but don't lie to your doctor. I go up in there and they'll ask me, did you take this? And I say, no, I did not take it. And this is why. Because the side effects from the medicine outweighed the benefit that it was going to be to me. When I was on dialysis, they would give me some medicine and they'd give me a prescription for whatever. So when I go back, they'd be like, did you take that? Nope, that's why I'm here today. I'm not taking that. That makes me feel worse. And we'd go back and forth and fuss, but they understood that I cared about how I feel. And if a medicine is going to make me feel worse and it's not helping anything, then I'm not going to take it. Now, there are medicines out there that will make you feel worse that you have to take. I'm just saying in my situation, that is what I did. But if you're not taking it, don't tell the doctor you're taking it. Don't lie, because what they'll do is they'll say, okay, Tamiko didn't take her Ozempic. I'm going to just use that as a hypothetical. She didn't take her Ozempic, so we need to give her something stronger because the Ozempic didn't work. No, it's not that the Ozempic didn't work. It's that Tamiko didn't take it. So that's why you have to be very honest and upfront with your providers. Now, this is a side note. If you're doing illicit drugs, tell a doctor you're doing illicit drugs and get you some help, but don't say that you're not. And then they're thinking, okay, they're looking at your chart and say, I gave them this, I gave them this, and I gave them this, and this is not working. So let me try this. No, if you had a drink, tell them you had a drink. Don't lie to them. This is your health. This is your body. So you have to make sure you're communicating with that primary care and all of your doctors as to what's going on in your life. Again, I am not a medical professional. I am just an empowered patient who has a whole lot of diagnosis and is in I have a slew of doctors, and I just make sure I honestly communicate with them to make sure that I'm still here, and because I want to be here for many more years to come. Okay, so I'm going to keep going unless there's some other questions. So again, we're talking about your family history, knowing, what dosage your family's on, what doctors your family members are going to, what surgeries they've had. And it's key. For me, I have 3 kidneys. So I have the 2 I was born with, and I have the transplanted kidney. So They have to know which side the kidney's on. My kidney is in my front left, right? So I don't want anybody messing with the front left side of my body, because that's where the kidney sits. But I don't want them to think that the kidney's on the front right. It's on the front left. So that's why I say the surgeries and where things are located. Allergies, again, you have to know it. Okay, me. I know my family's history. I had one from my mother. Actually, my aunt was the one in our family that started this. She created one for my mom in 1999 when my mom was first diagnosed with breast cancer. So every surgery, every ounce of medication, my mom's medical history, the one that my aunt had, was very thick, but she had one. So my dad, once he had his second transplant, because he had 2 transplants, he created one. His was about the size, I say, of a credit card. It probably was about the size of this Post-it note. And he had it really small. He had all his medications, all his surgeries back and front. So whenever something happened to my dad, we went in his wallet and we knew exactly what was going on. So my mom had a larger version. My dad carried a smaller version. I currently have one for my maternal aunt. And she just scratches out stuff on hers. At this point, she just writes it. She'll print it every now and then. And if stuff changes, hers is pink. She also had breast cancer. She's a breast cancer advocate. So she has one as well. And then my husband and my daughter are in great health. So my medical history is important because of my diagnosis of polycystic kidney disease. And that was directly linked to genetics. All of the tests that were specific and helped the doctors direct my care. Everything they did for me, for the most part in the beginning, was all related to that polycystic kidney disease. And like I said, I have several members who have passed away, and so I have several cousins that have the disease. So this is running rampant on the my father's side. My blood clot was, I think I talked about this earlier, was induced by medication. But knowing my father's history, his cause of death was actually pulmonary embolism. Knowing that and talking to my hematologist about my dad's history, that made him do a genetics test. And that's where he diagnosed me with the genetics. I was prone to blood clots. So that affected all of the medication that I could take in the future. I cannot take any hormonal medications. So knowing that and having that in my medical history is very important. And it guides all of my diagnoses, and it guides future medication. Okay, so what's next? So hopefully everybody has a sheet of paper, or they have their computer, or however we're going to start this medical history. And at any time, if you see me on the street, or if you want to reach out to me, please do. I'm on Facebook and I can help you as much as I know. You can also Google medical histories. There's a ton of information out there about it, but this is just one. And I've redacted some of the stuff in here, but this is just some stuff that I use, that whenever I go to the doctor, I take it with me. So these are some of the items that you need. List of the family contacts. I have 3. Your allergies, very important. Your diagnosis and when diagnosed, a list of the medications. And I say over the counter and prescribed. Surgeries, list of immunizations if you choose, your blood type, and your family history of illnesses, what, when, and if deceased, what was the cause of death. So,
We have a raised hand.
yes. I'm sorry, go ahead. Did someone have a question? Okay, I'll keep going. So here's some of the key information that you're going to need for your medical history. Your name, your contact information, just like a resume, I put it at the top of the page. Sarah Lamont, I think I see a hand. Go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon. Thank you so very much for this very important, critical information. You are doing a phenomenal job. What I want to add is just one thing. What we're really talking about is a concept that we call health literacy. And it has, of course, we know what the term literacy means, someone who's, able to read, of course. But health literacy is how engaged, educated, and empowered a patient is in their own healthcare.
Yes,
and
yes.
What you said was key, that when you go to your doctor, they know that they are in for a conversation that you are an extremely active participant in. there are people who are extremely intelligent and educated, but they do not have this skill that you have developed to be able to have these conversations with their healthcare providers. And I would just like to encourage everyone to please, that there are people who literally, and not just a single digit number of people, there are people who have had surgeries and they have no idea why. They
Yes.
wake up and they say, oh, I had a hysterectomy. They have no idea. They just do whatever the doctor tells them to do.
Yes.
And I just would like to really, really encourage everyone to please be as engaged as possible. Your healthcare is for you.
Yes.
You know, the doctors are there to offer their expert opinion, their medical opinion, the doctors, the nurses, the pharmacists, everybody, the whole healthcare team. But it is really up to you to make the decisions with their information, with their expert opinion. But if you don't understand, and it's easy to not understand something that a medical, practitioner is telling you, say, it's very easy to say, I'm sorry, can you say that in a different way? Because I don't think I'm grabbing that and I need to. You need to be empowered to say that. Don't just sit there and shake your head, because a lot of times I can tell you as a healthcare practitioner that has happened all day, every day. And we are trained to say, are you understanding? Tell me what your takeaways from this conversation, to make sure that the patient does understand it. But not everyone is going to have the comfort level that you have to ask the next question. And that's what I really want to encourage everyone to understand. Their health literacy has nothing to do with, their level of education, because I can tell you story after story about people who have PhDs and they will call and ask certain questions. And after they've gone to the doctor, they're calling and asking certain questions that I'm like, you should ask your doctor this.
Yes.
But they just don't ask. Talking about a surgery, I'm like, well, how long did they tell you you're going to be, unconscious for? I don't know. How long is, what is your recuperation going to look like? I don't know. I'm like, well, you need to add, there are some necessary questions you need to ask prior to all of these procedures or surgeries or what have you. And sometimes they don't even know why they're having the surgery.
I agree.
You have to, it's critical. You have to be able to ask those questions.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, I appreciate those comments. And if this is the thing, if you don't know what to ask, we are blessed at this time with Google. If you don't know what to ask your doctor, Google it. I have pain in this part of my body. What should I ask my doctor? It'll come up. I love Google. I go in there and I'll get a list of questions and I'll compile those questions, and that's what I'll ask my doctor. So please do. And I'll give you, and I'm so glad you brought up the literacy, because I'll give you some more, being transparent, giving you some more information about myself. When I got on the medication that caused the issue, it was to help me with the perimenopause. And they told me that there was a potential side effect of blood clots, but the blood clot starts in your leg, you'll have pain and redness, and then it'll travel up and you may have nausea, vomiting, and that's how you know you have a blood clot. So I took the medicine for a couple of months. I was actually on a Zoom call presenting to the state of Louisiana Department of Health, and my chest started hurting and I could not breathe. And I was like, I thought I was panicking, but I do a lot of presentations. So I was like, okay, I can't be panicking. I know this is not anxiety, but I got through the presentation. I reached out to the vice president of the company. I said, did I seem out of sorts? She was like, no. So that was on a Wednesday. So Thursday, I called my doctor. I did telehealth because this was deep in COVID. And he said, oh, it sounds like GERD. And I said, no, I have reflux. This is not reflux. I can't breathe. I'm having chest pains. This isn't reflux. So a couple more days went by. I'm Googling, researching, it could be reflux. That's a side effect, but no, this is going on too long. Now, I had been Googling the medication that I was on, and I saw that there was a potential for blood clots, but I still did not think I had it because I did not have the I guess, what they told me, the symptoms that were going to happen. So one morning, and I believe in first mind, following your first mind, I believe the Holy Spirit will walk you through things. I got up about 6 o'clock in the morning and I started Googling again, and I found an article. And based upon what I read in the article, I got up, went straight to the hospital and was diagnosed. First, they said it was COVID. We had to go back and forth about that because I I'm a significant participant in my healthcare. So we went back and forth about COVID. They gave me the test, no COVID. There are certain things I cannot have in the hospital based upon my diagnosis. So we went back and forth about that. They ended up giving me a test and said, yes, you have a pulmonary embolism, which is a blood clot in your lung. I was going to keep going to the doctor until they figured out what was wrong. Please do not stop because someone tells you this is your diagnosis. If you continue to have symptoms and you continue to have issues, go to the doctor, go to another doctor. Please be an active participant in your health, right? They are subject matter experts, but I've been with me for 54 years. So, and I have multiple subject matter experts in my life, but please be a health advocate for yourself. Please be an empowered patient. And this is just the beginning of being an empowered patient for yourself and being an even empowerment for your family. You cannot just take what they say at face value, because you could look up one symptom and that one symptom could be a list of a whole bunch of different things. And like I said, I'm being very transparent about myself because I really want to share what all I've been through and make sure that this is the foundation for you putting all of your items in one location so that if something happens and you cannot speak for yourself, your family can speak for you. My husband does not always go with me to the doctor. My daughter does not always go with me to the doctor. They do not know the conversations that we have, but based upon the diagnosis and the medication, I put it in this medical history. So if something happens and I cannot speak for myself, at least at a minimum, they have something to start with. And I usually have on my bracelet, the little alert, medical alert that tells them on the inside exactly what's going on. And so much is so as the kidney is located on the left front side. So I have everything in there. So you might want to consider that as well, but let me keep going. So the key information you'll need for your medical history, your information, your name, your contact information, like I was saying, like at the top of your resume, your blood type. I didn't know about blood type until I was getting ready for the kidney transplant, which I don't know why I didn't know it. I just never asked for it. Get your blood type. When you go to your primary care next time, just tell them I want to know my blood type. And they'll run a test and tell you what your blood type is. And you could add it on here. It's key in case something happens and you need a blood transfusion or you need blood. It's key to know, look, you don't have to run it. I already know I'm A positive. Your physicians, specialties. You're going to see a little glimpse of mine. I have a ton of specialties. I list my physicians by their specialty, their name, and their address. Also, my diagnosis, what your diagnosis is and the date you were diagnosed, what your allergies are, and describe the side effects or what happens when you take the medication. You want to have not only the list of your prescribed medication, but the over-the-counter medication, right, that you're taking. Whether you self-diagnosed, the pharmacist told you to do it, your friend told you to do it, doesn't matter. When you're on it, put it on here. Surgeries, the name of your surgeon and when and where you had the surgery. Emergency contacts, you should have at least 3, and they change. It was funny because when I was redoing mine, my dad passed away in 2019. When I was redoing it, I was like, oh my God, I have to remove my dad. And that I had to sit there and contemplate, and then I removed him and replaced him. So things happen. And like I tell you, this is a living, breathing document that you are responsible for in your life. And also, finally, your family history, relationships, what it is, and the diseases that they may have. And this is just a small medical history that you can carry around with you, but you can add as much as you want or delete as much as you want, whatever you feel comfortable with your family knowing. Okay, so hopefully you have your sheet of paper, you have your computer. So at the very top, I put medical history. I have my name, my address, my city, my state, my telephone number. Then I have my emergency contacts. So I have my daughter, my husband, and my aunt. Those are my emergency contacts. And I have their address and their telephone numbers, but you can have a spouse, a parent, a sibling. All right. And then next I typed my blood type. So hopefully you're writing and you know what your blood type is, whatever it may be. And then I have physicians. I have my primary care, his name, his address, city, state, and phone number. My nephrologist, his name, city, state, and phone number. My dermatologist, because as a result of taking immunosuppressants, I have to go to doggone it, every doctor that's known, because the immunosuppressants can cause skin cancer. They can cause all kind of issues that come out of it. So if you have a urologist, which as a part of the kidney, I had a urologist, their name, address, telephone number, your OBGYN or whatever doctors that you have. So all of your doctors, list them, their names, their address, their telephone numbers. So when you actually go to the doctor's office, I hand them a copy of this if it changes. My primary care, maybe not so much, because when I tell you, when he sees me, he gets comfortable in that chair because he knows we're about to have a conversation. Because when I go in there, Lord forgive me, I'm a Google doctor, right? So I've Googled everything, and we're gonna have a conversation about, look, this is how I'm feeling, because I'm actually going tomorrow because I've had the sinus infection for 2 weeks. So I'm going tomorrow. This is how I'm feeling. The medication that you gave me didn't work. So let's figure out what's going on here. I don't have COVID. I don't have strep. I don't have the flu. So we need to figure out what's going on with me and tell me what tests I need to take. What do I need to do? What blood work? Do I need a steroid? So I'm going to have a conversation with him. So he may not need to see this, but if I'm going back to my urologist and I haven't seen him in 2, 3, 4 years, he's going to want to see this. He's going to want to know what medications I'm on, what surgeries I'm on. The first question they ask, have you been in the hospital lately? Do you have any new diagnosis? So all of that stuff is going to be on my list. Okay, here's the second page. My diagnosis, it should be an ES, I apologize. So I have my diagnoses listed: my polycystic kidney disease, my high blood pressure, I was on dialysis, the perimenopause, the blood clot disorder. I took some off because it was too long. So I have a whole slew, and I tell you when I was diagnosed. So it's important to have all of this in one location, again, for your family. What are my allergies? One of the medications causes lockjaw. One of them causes anxiety and itching. I already told you the morphine causes breathing problems. So I have to determine, what am I going to do? Am I going to go ahead and suffer through the morphine with the breathing? Or am I going to try to take another pain med that may not be as strong, but it's going to help me get through the pain? I have another medication causes itching and severe headaches. Hives, there's one I take, I break out in hives. And then I have another one I take, it simulates an appendicitis and causes severe stomach cramps. So I have all of these allergies listed and what the side effect is. Medication, I list all of my prescribed medications, and then I list my over-the-counter so that they know, look, I may have an issue at some point that they're looking at this and it's not caused by anything that I'm prescribed, but I love me some Alka-Seltzer. So I know one day Alka-Seltzer is going to bite me. So I have to put it on here because I have reflux because of all the medications. So they need to know that, look, I take an Alka-Seltzer maybe 3 times a week, and they need to know that because that may cause a problem later. So emergency. Emergency has a lot of vitamin C in it. So you got to be careful about your consumption of it. So if you take 1 pack per day, the doctor needs to know that. Surgeries. So I list all of my surgeries. I have the name of the surgery, a C-section, where was it done? It was done in Phoenix, Arizona. Who was the doctor? Were they affiliated with a group at that point in time? And what's their name, number, and address? Because when you go to the hospital, they ask you, if you're in the hospital, you may be unconscious, and they're asking your significant other, whoever that may be, have they had any surgeries? That's key to know that I've had this particular surgery, that I've had, I had 2 surgeries for dialysis. I had the peritoneal surgery and I had the hemodialysis surgery. That is important to know. It is important to know that back then I have it on here, I have a blood clot, I had a blood clot, and they had to reverse the surgery for the hemodialysis. So they never used that, but that's important. So on my actual history, there was a blood clot, they reversed the surgery, it's no longer viable. So this is, and see how I'm articulating it to you? Just think if something happened to me and I couldn't say all of this, where is it gonna be? It will be in writing. And I had a couple of these surgeries at Baton Rouge General. I had a couple of surgeries at Tulane in New Orleans. I had a surgery in Phoenix, Arizona at Good Samaritan Hospital. So those electronic medical records, are not communicating. And back when I had my daughter with the C-section and all of the problems I had with being pregnant, those records are over 10 years old. So the only person that's going to have that record is me. And if I can't articulate it, this will. So that's why it's so important to have it. Aren't there any more questions in the chat? I see one popped up.
I have a comment
Mhm.
and also a question. Ms. Ashlyn Kane, would you care to unmute?
Hello, my voice is like lost right now, but can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
I'm so sorry, I'm at work right now, but I wanted to comment that over-the-counter medications, herbs are really important to include as well, just because of different drug interactions. So any natural herbs that people take.
Thank you. That's great. I love it. So she's saying add herbs, natural herbs. And yes, when I was taking, and I'm gonna pronounce it wrong, but I was taking black cahoose, it was on there. And then that was 2 years ago, so I took it off. So yes, herbs are very important to have on there because they do have drug interactions. And you can actually, I'll just add this as a side note, you can go online and type in your drugs. Does this drug interact with this drug? Does this herb interact with this drug? There's a, I want to say it's the Food and Drug Administration has it. And whenever I'm about to be prescribed something, I go and see the interactions because the two main drugs that I am on is Prograf and Myfortic. If it interacts with Prograf and Myfortic, I am not taking it because that is what's keeping my body from attacking the new kidney that I have. So thank you very much, Ms. Kane. I appreciate that comment. I think I have a couple more.
Yes, we have a question from Mrs. Moore Paul. Wants to know how far back in your family's medical history is relevant to know?
As far back as you can know. I would think it because it's genetics. So, and it's still funny because when I was pregnant, I had hyperemesis gravidina. When I tell you I am a walking CPT code book, HCPCS code book, I am. So I was nauseated and I vomited and lost 40 pounds. And I did it the entire pregnancy. I had a PICC line. I carried TPN, which is, they had to feed me through a tube and all that kind of stuff. So while I was talking to my mom about it, come to find out my grandmother had the same issue and my great-grandmother had the same issue. So I didn't even think that they would have, this nausea and vomiting. And all I could think of was, how did y'all have 9 children feeling like this and I only have 1? So as far back as you can go, I would go. My grandmother, my dad's mom, was the first person that I know of that had polycystic kidney disease. And again, being fully transparent, the only reason I know is because she was the result of an interracial relationship where someone adopted my grandmother. So I don't know her mother or her father, but I know that she's the first person in our family to be diagnosed with polycystic kidney disease. So she died from it. Her daughter died from it. My dad passed away from side effects from it because pulmonary embolisms is a part of polycystic kidney disease. And I've had my dad's sister died a week later. She also had polycystic kidney disease. My dad died in October. She died in October. She died in November. So as far back as you can go, I would go. My history with my family, I think as far back as I could go is the 1800s. So I would want to know it because it's all genetics. So as far back as you can go, I would get it.
And we have one additional comment
Mhm.
by Mrs. Lamont. She says that including all supplements is a good idea.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Lamont. All supplements. So I would include everything. And that's all I'm on. So that's why you don't see anything else. That list that I had, let me go back one. I think that's pretty much everything that I'm on. So you don't see any herbs because I don't do any herbs. And I stopped taking the black cahoose because it didn't work for me. Everybody's different. But make sure you list it. And I would even add where it says over the counter, I would add herbs or supplements. I would add all of that. So thank you so much for that comment. That was great. All of this. And if you have some comments, please put it in the Q&A or come off the chat, because like I said, this is an interactive, this is a sharing. This is, I've learned this over the course of, since probably 2012 or 2013, about having in a solid relationship with your doctors. I fired a few, having a knowledgeable team around you. When I had my kidney transplant, one of the newspapers came and they talked to me about it. And I told them this became my job. I was self-employed. I was the boss. I had volunteers and I had employees. My volunteers were my family and my employees were my doctors. And if you weren't doing right by me, we had to move on to another employee. I had books, I did research, and of course, this is another workshop, but when you get ill and if you have to go on short-term disability or if you have to go into Social Security, being sick is a financial burden. So you need to be financially prepared and know in your mind, if you have short-term disability, you need to read those documents and understand what is the waiting period. How much money are you going to get? Are you going to get 60%? Are you going to get 70%? Is it 100%? Is it 50%? Do you even have short-term disability? Life insurance. Now I am not insurable. So whatever life insurance I have is all I'm gonna have. So you guys have to really, healthcare is a job. Being the empowered patient for me is a job. It is my job with my employees, my volunteers, my family, and my employees, my doctors and nurses. So, that's just some added information, but that's a whole nother workshop. So let me get to the family history. So knowing your family history and having it on here, because when you look at when you go to the doctor and you fill out that piece of paper, the first thing it asks you is, does your family have this? High blood pressure, tuberculosis, it goes down, heart disease, it goes down the whole list. So this is what my family really has a few things. They have breast cancer. It is prevalent in my family. So I have to make sure I get mammograms. I have to do the self-exams. I have to do all of it. High blood pressure on my mom's side. My mom got medication-induced diabetes because she was on some pills that caused it. So that let me know I'm possibly could have that, which I did because I ended up having medication-induced diabetes as well. She was allergic to penicillin. So am I, causes hives. Her cause of death was complications from breast cancer. So I just have to keep that in the back of my mind that while I'm fighting all of these other things, that I'm also susceptible to breast cancer because of the genetics of my family. My grandmother, my aunt, 2 aunts, which are sisters, and my mom. On my father's side, polycystic kidney disease. So I have an uncle who has it, 2 cousins, one of them had a transplant, one of them didn't, 2 aunts. Some of the symptoms or some of the things that happen with polycystic kidney disease, strokes, embolism, pulmonary embolism, and there's another thing, but I can't think of it off the top of my head. So I have to be very careful. Aneurysm, that's the third thing, the aneurysms. So with the polycystic kidney disease, I have to be very vigilant about my health and making sure that I remember all of these things that could potentially happen. My dad was on dialysis. He had not only peritoneal, he did hemodialysis as well. Peritoneal dialysis is one that you do at your house. It does not deal with blood. Hemodialysis, that's the one you commonly hear of when you go to the center. You can also do hemodialysis at home, but it's dealing with blood. But the hemo is normally done in the center. My dad did both. He had 2 kidney transplants, one in 2000, one in 2005, both from deceased donors. High blood pressure, that was a part of the polycystic kidney disease. He was allergic to antihistamine. I wasn't, but my brother is. So my brother is allergic to antihistamine. So for him, the genetics is important to know that. And of course, his cause of death was a pulmonary embolism, which is a blood clot in the lung. So did not know, I had a blood clot before, but did not know that I had an issue with it where now, I can't take hormones or certain medications. So understanding your family's history is very important. And like I said, I just put the aunts, cousins in the my uncle, but my grandmother, and I had, there are several other members of my family. And like I said, because we don't know who my grandmother's parents were, then that's kind of where we start with the polycystic kidney disease. But just to reiterate, to go as far back as because it just helps and it will help your children in the future. Or if you have children now, understand, if you're feeling a certain kind of way, what they can look for, just to be prepared. And I like what Ms. Lamont said, Dr. Lamont, health literacy, the whole thing is literacy, period. Whether it's to read or write, understanding your health, talking to your doctors, all of that is very important. Being your own empowered patient is just very important. And I think I have some more questions. Excuse me.
Yes, we have 3 questions.
Okay.
The first question is, can you give any suggestion of how to approach family members about their medical history?
Okay. Actually, it's just a sit down conversation. It's like, look, I am trying to prepare my own medical history. And is this something that we could talk about? What is going on in my family? What is happening in my family? I would just have a straight, direct, and I am a very direct person. So it might be easier for me than others, but it's a direct conversation. And then you can, maybe talk to some cousins, maybe talk to some of the other family members, maybe not your mother or your father, but some of their siblings, if you can, just to find out what's going on in your family. It's very important to know. It helps you with everything. Because, for instance, something so simple as Tylenol and ibuprofen, for me, is important. If you have liver issues, you don't need to take Tylenol. If you have kidney issues, you don't need to take ibuprofen. So that is something that's very important. Now, they both have side effects, they both have issues. But for me, when I go to the doctor, anything that remotely has ibuprofen in it, I don't take it. NSAIDs, all of that kind of stuff. So that comes from me understanding my family history with my dad, watching him go through, polycystic kidney disease, watching him go through end-stage renal failure, watching him go through the 2 transplants, and listening to what the doctors were telling him. And then I have the same doctors. So my nephrologist was my dad's doctor. So I've been with him since 2004. So he knew my dad, he understood it. So I made it a point to make sure that my urologist is my dad's urologist. So I made it a point to maneuver myself to where they know my family. And again, when I walk through the door, I need my doctors to be like, cheers. And hopefully y'all know what cheers is. Hey, Tamiko, how you doing? What's going on today? I don't want you to say, okay, this is patient number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is Tamiko. So when I walk through the door, Tamiko, what's going on today? How you feeling? What's happening? So that comes from knowing it. So I would just have a direct conversation. And if you can't get it from them, go indirect, and try to get it from some other family members. Is there another question?
I had a question. I asked it in the chat that they.
Okay, go ahead.
So in my instance, I was raised by a single mother, so I don't have any medical history or information on my father. What do you suggest we put in that box or in that section?
You would have to say unknown unless you could find something out. Or you can, and then there's some tests that you could take, right? You could do some blood work to try to see if you're predetermined to, or predestined, for whatever, lack of a better word. You can go get some genetic tests. Like for me, even though I know this stuff, I still don't know if I'm going to get it, right? I know my mom had breast cancer. I know all this stuff, but that doesn't mean that I'm necessarily going to get it. But there are some genetics tests, and I think it's called Braxis. Ms. Lamont, Dr. Lamont, can you tell me what that, it's like 2, I think, genetic tests. But there are some genetic tests you could get the doctors to do for you just to see, are there vitamin deficiencies? Because those are some genetic issues where you have vitamin deficiencies. So even if you just ask them to do some basic blood work, but everybody's not going to know. Because think about it, when my grandmother was diagnosed with polycystic kidney disease, she started from scratch. She did not know. So whatever you find out, you may be able to share it with your children, because my grandmother did not know. So I would suggest, and again, empowered patient, not a doctor. I would just suggest that you maybe be honest with your doctor about it and say, look, I would want to see, am I, predisposed to have any of these issues, cancer or kidney disease? Can you do a test that you may not ordinarily do? It may not be that normal CBC where they just take that general blood work. It may be something directed towards, the kidneys, or something directed towards something else. One of my former managers had a vitamin D deficiency, right? She never knew it. She just felt bad. There was some other issues going on. So the doctor did this vitamin deficiency blood work test. Come to find out, it listed all of what she had issues with. So that's what I'm saying, researching and understanding and listening and talking to people, you know, being open and honest about all of this. You know, we're so, if I get diagnosed, it's, you know, everybody's like, oh my God, I got diagnosed. I'm kind of the opposite. I'm like, Lord, I was diagnosed with this. Guide me to somebody who could tell me about this, you know? And when you start talking, simple issue is I have, God dog it, I can't even remember, and I didn't even put that on there, but the problem that you have with your foot, where there's a lot of pain under your foot, I was just talking about, Lord, I was at work saying, I have so much pain. And I said what the diagnosis was. And somebody's like, oh, I have that. This is what I do. I freeze a bottle of water. And this is what I put under it. So Dr. Lamont, you can go ahead and start talking. Just some of that is very important. I'm going to let you chime in.
Well, you know, I've been over here sitting on my hands because, you know, this is such great information. First of all, because, you know, you and I can talk about anything all doggone day. So let's start with that. But this is fabulous information. I'm glad that you have, you know, allowed us to chime in with some comments. The term I think you were trying to come up with was peripheral neuropathy.
Thank you.
Yeah, with under your feet. And you're talking about the breast cancer gene,
Yes.
other testing. But the other thing I wanted to bring up, two quick points. One is we talked about the medication list. We talked about the supplements. I want to make sure that the audience is aware, of the importance of that prescription history. And of course, this is my pharmacy background coming out. First thing is huge shout out to the independent pharmacists. I love an independent pharmacy, mom and pop shops. I think you get a level of service there that you don't get at the big box pharmacies. With that being said, if you happen to deal with the big box pharmacies, I'm talking about the Walgreens, the CVS's, I suggest you don't hop around. Don't have some of your prescriptions at Walgreens and some at CVS and some at, you know, mom and pop kind of pharmacy, because the good thing about that is if you deal with Walgreens or CVS, and hear me clearly, that is not a plug for any pharmacy in particular, but you have different locations that you can utilize without having to shop outside of that particular chain, so that you could go to Walgreens anywhere and pull up your prescription history for all locations. You know, so, but Walgreens isn't going to be able to necessarily do that for CVS. So at least you could have all of your prescriptions at one place. So stick with wherever you are, stick with one location, one brand, let's say, for your prescription history, because then they could pull up everything that you have, you know, but they can't go across brands. So at least that way you can have a complete list there. I wanted to bring that up. And another thing is actually a comment from my daughter, who also, you know, loves you with her whole heart, and she's here, but she brought up the fact that to make sure that you realize what you said about the possibility of even firing a doctor. That is absolutely 100%, you're right. Even it doesn't matter how long you've gone to them. You know, this is a patient, they're in the business of patient care. And if they are refusing to do something for you, you have the right to, of course, obviously fire them if that's something that, you know, you feel it goes to that level. You certainly have the right to speak to that and express your disappointment or exactly why you want something, a particular test run or what have you, and to ask them to document in your chart why it is that they are refusing to do this or why they don't think it's necessary. And certainly you need to document that on your medical history as well. Definitely. For sure. But again, that's back to that being the empowered, educated, you know, and an involved patient. You have to be able to, if you don't advocate for yourself, no one else will.
Thank you so much. Yes, so true. Excellent. And one thing I didn't add on here, and I'll just add with the medications, you know, I do go to one because when I go in there, we have conversations. Look, they just prescribed me with this. What are the side effects? And is this going to have a problem with this? And then they call me if there's an issue. So I like that. Another thing is for us, one of the side effects of some of the medication is hair loss. So, talk to your beauticians. If you lose hair, you could put that on here. I had a beautician who was a former nurse. And when I was going through the dialysis, I lost all of the back of my hair. Ask me where it went, I don't know, but all of it was gone. And that's when I ended up, becoming natural. So, hair loss is very important, and having somebody around you, that was another part of I told you my business, I called it Francis Enterprises. That was my medical business, and my volunteers and my employees, my beautician, which I had to find another one. I purposely looked for somebody who could work with me with my hair. So I know hair is very important to us, but that's another thing that I did not put on here, but I wanted to share, especially with Dr. Lamont talking about the pharmacy. Are there any other questions? This is just kind of, as information changes, this document changes. I'll use what Dr. Lamont just says. If you move from CVS to an independent pharmacy, or you move from Walgreens, hey, let them know it, put it on here. They already know, and I'm just gonna be upfront and honest, because CVS opens earlier than Walgreens and I need the early. They go, Tamiko, do you still use CVS in Donaldsonville? Yes, I do. Let's send it there. So do we have any other questions? Because I'm winding down.
Yes, we have 2 more comments, and I think we asked Mrs. Shannon Willis to come off mute and make her comment, followed by Mrs. Erica Coleman.
Okay. You can come off mute. I didn't get the first name, so.
Ms. Willis, basically her comment was,
Okay.
thank you for being so transparent. Many of the things you mentioned, she didn't think of including in a written medical history.
Okay, thank you. I
Hi,
appreciate
I'm
that.
here.
Oh, okay,
I'm
great.
sorry.
Oh, no, that's okay. Go ahead.
I was just thanking you for being transparent about everything that your medical history, your medicines, your allergies, everything. There were things that I didn't even think of, as far as like asking my sisters, or I'll have to ask them anyway, because there's some things that I don't remember that my mom, things that she had before she passed. But there are many things that you mentioned that I didn't even think of, even including my pharmacy. And I was just sitting here telling my husband, I was like, there are some things I need to add to that. And so we're going to type up everything, and
Awesome.
we're going to put it in our safe with all of our things. Like, if something happens, that's something that we'll grab.
Excellent. And I'd keep it on your phone and share it on email, because mine are on email, and I'll have version 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I just, like, when I need to get it, it's on email. So I
Yes,
can.
ma'am. It's in my notes on my phone.
Good. Excellent.
It is. So, and he just said, just email it to me or just text it to me. So I'll probably just print it out for him.
Excellent. And I'll just say, when my dad was ill and he had fallen, and then he had a stroke, and I was able to go into his wallet and pull out. Now I needed a magnifying glass, but he bragged about his little bitty card with all his stuff on it. But I was able to pull that out, because even though my life mirrored his as far as what was going on in the medication, his dosages were different. He was on Prograf, but he was on, I think it was like 5 milligrams, and mine at the time might have been 3. And he was on my Fortic, but his dosage was different. I might have been on steroids, but he wasn't. So, having that little card and just being able to pull it out of his wallet was important, and even, gentlemen, put whatever you're taking on there. It's important. It may be your personal information, but if you're taking it, put it on there. So, okay. And there was another question. Thank you, Ms. Willis, for that. Appreciate that comment.
Yes, I just had a comment. I just kind of wanted to piggyback off of what you said. That it's just very important to consider getting a second opinion if you aren't satisfied with your current provider or plan of care. Even if you don't necessarily want to fire your doctor, it's still okay to go get a second opinion. And especially if you are like in the actual hospital setting, I would like to say that it's very important, like you said, to advocate for yourself and speak up, because as you stated earlier, you may be under the care of doctors and they have all these expertise, but you are with you every day. So sometimes you have to trust your gut, and when something isn't right. And so sometimes you have to speak up and just push and, just do what you need to do to feel like you're being heard. And like I say, sometimes even being familiar with, chain of command in hospital settings, like who do you speak
Yes.
with if you feel like you're not getting the care that you need? Because some systems have certain teams in place that you can notify if you feel like you aren't getting the care that you need.
Yes. And I have so many examples of that, but yes, you can, especially in a hospital setting. And, barring being in intensive care, I would have somebody stay with me if I'm in the hospital. When they're coming give that medication, if I can't ask what you're giving me, then, that person that's laying next to you or sitting on that couch, have them ask. When one of my cousins, it was one of my younger cousins, had a transplant right about in the middle of COVID, she could have 2 people with her. We went, and I was one of the persons because I had been through it already. So I was able to ask the questions. I was able to make sure when she's rolled out that she has some pain medication, because when I was rolled out after my transplant, I felt it all because I had so many issues with pain meds. I didn't have anything. So, I was there to advocate for her. So, make sure you have to educate your family, because they're the
Yes,
ones that
it's
are
so
going to
important.
be with you, right? They're the ones that are going to be right next to you. So I can't be the smartest person in the room and I'm the one in the bed. I need my whole family to be the smartest people in the room, right?
Right.
Everybody to know what's going on with me, because those are the ones that are either going to speak for you, or like Dr. Lamont said, they're not going to ask the questions, whether they have a PhD or, second grade education. They're not going to ask the question, but I need the ones in there to ask the questions.
Yes, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
We have an anonymous comment.
Okay.
That's note or research with some insurance companies. Genetic testing may or may not be covered. We also have a question by Mrs. Wilma Matthews Weathers, if she would like to come off mute, followed by an Andrea Tucson.
Can you hear me now? Can you
Yes,
hear me
I can
now?
hear you.
How do you feel about mail order medications?
Oh, I love it. Mine comes in the mail. My Prograf, my Fortic, my vitamins come from Mississippi. I failed to say that part, but I use CVS for the other stuff. So when I had the transplant, the doctor set me up with a place in Mississippi. And 3 of my medications come from Mississippi, and they've been coming from them since the beginning, 2014. The rest of the stuff, the Ozempic, the Eliquis, what else am I on? And there are a couple more, they come from CVS, but I do not have a problem with them. And even though I'm on Prograf, there are a bunch of manufacturers that make Prograf, right? So I just try to make sure it's the same manufacturer, because CVS might use somebody different, and maybe Dr. Lamont might want to come off and talk about this, but there are multiple companies that might manufacture the medicine. So I try to stick with the same one, so I don't have a problem with mail order. And it would be what's best for you, though, that you're going to have to decide. I have a wonderful relationship with that particular pharmacist, because they call me, they make sure I have what I need. Again, cheers, right? I have that cheers environment with these people. And even the CVS in Donaldsonville, they know me. So when I walk in there, it's also, hey, Tamiko, how you doing? And I make sure, my name is Tamiko Francis Garrison. I don't say all that. I say Tamiko because I want you to remember. Now, if it was something, my first name was rough and it was my last name, then I'd be Garrison. But I make sure that these people have a solid relationship with me. So I don't have a problem with it. But I'm glad you brought that up, because I forgot that I get those 3 from that mail order.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. But thank you for bringing that up.
And I was just going to say the same thing. I have no problem with those as well, but the mail order pharmacies, I think it's a great savings opportunity for people as well. But just
they call you. They call you and let
yes.
you know, look, you should be at about 4 days or 5 days. Do you need me to mail it? When do you want me to mail it? It's great. It's
Correct.
awesome.
One quick amen for a previous comment that you said about having someone in the hospital with you. I 100% agree with that. If you're in the hospital, someone needs to be there with you. unless you're so critical in ICU that they don't have, family member, only visiting hours or what have you. But if you're in the hospital, someone needs to be there with you, because you might not have the capacity to ask the necessary questions, to make the necessary observations. And I go so far as to say, unless it's a routine, annual exam or something like that, if you're being worked up for something, let me say it like that. If you're being worked up for something, it's probably best to have someone else there, because you're caught up in the moment of trying to process everything. And sometimes it is beneficial to have someone else there as another set of eyes and ears, and to, just say, okay, I'm sorry, that's prompting a question from me. Can I chime in here? Because I think that at the end of that, you walk away with more information to make better decisions about your healthcare.
And I'll add one, I'll be a little bit more transparent. So I had a family member that was in ICU. So I was able to go visit, and she told me that there was a nurse that was not treating her right. Okay. In ICU. Now, the ICU is the number of nurses, patient to nurse ratio is lower. So I was like, what? So here I go, I got to put on the other hat. And so I gave her cell phone, and I said, okay, if you need to put him on speakerphone, let me hear what's going on, but I am going to take care of it. So after he left out the room, she called me, told me what happened. I immediately started with the president of the hospital and worked my way. I was calling everybody. And that nurse got sent home for the day and was no longer allowed to work with my family member. So it is important and vigilant to ask those questions. Are they treating you okay? Is everything okay? Even in ICU, where you think everyone is going to treat you with the utmost respect and love and care, it does not always work like that. So you just have to be, protective of yourself and your family members. And that's why I said, I cannot be the smartest family member and I'm the one that's out, right? I'm the one laying in the bed unconscious. I need my entire team to be fully aware of what's going on in my life. But thank you so much, Dr. Lamont. I appreciate that. Any more questions? I know we're at an hour and 15 minutes.
Great. We have a phenomenal question. Andrea Toussaint, if you would like to come off mute.
Okay. Ms. Toussaint?
Good afternoon, everyone. Not so much a question, but as a comment, I also think that it is that is very important to include mental health history as well. I know that it's something that's in our community that we do not want to talk about, and it's taboo, but I think that that is important as well.
I totally agree. If you have any mental health diagnosis in your family, whether it's you or your family members, include it. What you're trying to do is give the doctors, your employees, for lack of a better way to put it, the most information that you can so that they could do the best job for you. If you don't give them anything, what do they have to work with? Think about if you're a manager or an employee at the job. When your manager comes to give you some information to do something, you want to get the most that you can so you could do the best that you can. And as a manager, I want to give my employees everything I can so that they could do the best that they can so we could work this together. I want that for my medical history. I want my doctors to know everything that they can. Do you drink, Tamiko? Yes, I drink beer and I drink wine. Do you do illicit drugs? No, I do not. But if I did, I need to say yes, because that may be a problem that's causing some of this. And then we need to work on something. Is there mental illness in your family? Is there has anybody been diagnosed with bipolar, schizophrenia? That's some things that you need to know so that you can not only tell know yourself but your children. They need to know, because if you're a parent, if you're an aunt, an uncle, grandparent, you will not be here always. And this may be the only document that you have to pass on to them, right? Because Tamiko, my daughter, knows all of this stuff. As hard as it is to hear it, because it is not easy to talk about this stuff. Nobody wants to talk about life or death. That's a whole nother workshop, right? But you have to be very transparent with your stuff so that your future children, grandchildren, your nieces, your nephews, they understand what's going on in your family. It's important. And the doctors, look, my grandmother had it, my dad had it, my uncle has it. And then the funny part is we had the same doctor. For the polycystic kidney disease, we all have the same doctor. For the breast cancer, we fired one. We found another one. We all had the same doctor. That's just, we're all locally here. It's easier that way. But, share that stuff. Don't keep it hidden. You need to know. We don't like to share anything about anything, but you have to. People need to know. It is going to affect generations to come. Like if my back is hurting and I know I have, something going on and I go get diagnosed with something, I need to tell my daughter. I need to tell my husband. I need to tell my cousins. I have cousins that we talk about this all the time. That's how we were able to find out who had polycystic kidney disease. You need to get tested. Are you having urinary issues? Does your back hurt? Do you get fever? Do you get chills? Okay, you might have polycystic kidney disease. Go get it checked out. So we have to be vocal about this. We have to share. And I know my dad used to say, no, I don't want to hear that gloom and doom. Yes, we do. I need to know. So tell me. Okay, any other questions?
We have one more question by, shall I say a comment by Miss Debbie Anderson, and then one final question by Ashley Johnson. And those attendees can come off mute and we'll be ready for your wrap up.
Thank you so much.
Miss Anderson?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Debbie Anderson, and I was just trying to point out the importance of knowing the background of your insurance. I work at Blue Cross Blue Shield as well, and I think it's very important that you know what your insurance covers for you, the history of it, and what you have access to. I just think that is very important for us to know what we can do with what we have.
I agree. That is outstanding comment. It surely is. What's covered, what's not, what's your deductible? Do you have a co-insurance, a co-payment?
Right.
All of that, and you can get that explanation of benefits. You can get the summary of benefits. You need to print all that or at least save it somewhere. That is an outstanding comment, Ms. Anderson.
Right.
I appreciate that. You do, whether you're on Medicaid, Medicare, Medicare Advantage, commercial, the marketplace, your employer, everybody's insurance is different. So
because you don't want money, you don't want the money part of it to cause a hindrance and have you stressed out when you're going through possibly a hard time,
Yes. And you do need to know that. I'm so glad you brought that up. That is an outstanding comment. I'm going to take a moment. When I was going through all of this, imagine me having brain fog, pain, I'm going to have surgery and I'm trying to read to see, okay, Social Security, I got to get on Social Security because, dialysis is covered by Social Security. I got to get on Medicare. I got to do all this kind of stuff. And I'm going out on disability. How long is short term? Is there long term? I'm trying to do all this at the same time I am ill. Thank you so much. That is, you need to know that stuff today. Understand it, highlight it, print it, whatever you need to do. Yes. While you're in your right mind and you can understand this stuff.
Right.
Yes. Excellent comment. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And then there was one more.
Final comment from Ms. Ashley Johnson.
Okay.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you for your transparency in this webinar. So how long did it take you to become accepting of your diagnosis, and how did you cope with the lifestyle changes that followed?
Oh, Jesus. Okay. So when I walked out, I walked into the doctor because I was feeling bad. I really was, but I did not know that I was in end-stage renal failure because they told me my dad went into it in his 60s. So I was going to be in my 60s going with my dad's diagnosis and how his health transpired. I was in my 40s. So when I went into Dr. Abear's office, who's my nephrologist, and he's like, oh, Tamiko, your numbers are kind of high. I think you're going into end-stage renal failure. But I think the reason he said it like that was because I had been going to him for so long. He knew my dad, he knew me. We knew I was ultimately going to get there, but he said it so nonchalantly. I was like, oh, okay, well, just tell me what I need to do And then I went in the car and I cried. I was like, oh God, I ain't ready for this. This is not where I want to be. This is not what I want to do. But, I cried. I prayed about it. My dad was still alive. I called my dad. I called my husband. Before I left that parking lot, I had made in my mind that I was going to do whatever I needed to do to survive for myself and for my family. I had already seen my dad go through some of this. I know today there's a possibility for me to get breast cancer. I've had a couple of scares. God has blessed me where I have not had it, but I have to keep that in the back of my mind every day. Lord, if it happens, I just have to do what I have to do to survive. And that's how I have been. I mean, it's not easy. It's not easy being sick every day. It's not easy having to take all these pills and, the shots, but I have to do what I have to do because I love life. I really do. I love my family. I love my sorority sisters. I love, everybody that's in my life. So in the morning, some days are better than others. Some evenings are better than others, but I am going to do whatever it is until God calls me home. I'm going to do whatever it is to fight for myself. I have my medical history ready. Like I said, I have created a cheers environment with my doctors. The one doctor that misdiagnosed me, my primary care physician, after he did that, I bet you he don't do it anymore because he understands that we had a conversation, and then it was so funny because he ended up talking to another family member who ended up having the same issue I had. And he ended up, which he can't do because of HIPAA, he couldn't tell her who I was, but he ended up telling her, oh, I had another patient and I misdiagnosed her and it was a pulmonary embolism. So I'm going to send you to get a test. He learned that day. And then we ended up talking, my aunt and I ended up at her house and my doctor called her because he was telling her the results of the test. And she was like, oh, Tamiko's here. And he was like, oh, can I talk to Tamiko? I said, sure. He's like, that's who I was talking about. It was your niece. So he learned that day, that my family, we're for lack of a better way to say it, we're about it, right? So we're going to do whatever we can to protect ourselves. So, it hit me. I cried. I had to do what I had to do. Got on dialysis, had to transplant, taking my medication, doing what I could do, making sure my medical history. And as it says right here, it speaks for me when I can't speak for myself. Because everybody doesn't know what's going on in your life all the time. We don't share that I'm on amlodipine with our spouse. We may not. It may be in casual conversation. It may not be. We may not say, oh, I'm taking this vitamin today, or I'm about to take emergency today. But if it's on there, on that medical history that they have, we know that there's a potential that, they may have to speak to it and it's on that document. So just have your medical history ready, have it available, share it with your family, those that you feel comfortable sharing it with. It doesn't have to be shared with everybody. Whoever's going to be that person to jump in that ambulance with you and be at the hospital with you, that's who needs to have it. So thank you very much. I appreciate all you guys holding on. We went over a little bit, but hopefully, you learned something today. I was as transparent as we can be. Maybe we could do a part 2. We can pull some other people in because there's so much to this. With Ms. Anderson talking about your insurance, with Dr. Lamont talking about the pharmacy, being your own advocate, the things that you could do, knowledge is power and reading is fundamental. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. You guys have a wonderful evening and thank you for being with us and being a part of day 8 of Baton Rouge Delta 22 days of service. We appreciate you being here and have a wonderful evening.